This isn't funny, Amber.
Would you like to play a game?
Do you like scary movies? 25 years after the original came out, Scream is back in theaters with a super meta slasher flick that only adds to the prolific body count of the Ghostface Killer. Or killers, I guess. Directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett, this movie updates the Scream saga for a modern audience, all while going back to basics, sticking to the rules of the previous Scream films, and we'll break all of that down later, plus what that ending means and where this franchise can go from here. But before we get to any of that, I have to warn you, we are about to spoil everything about this movie, including who wears the Ghostface mask and everything, so if you haven't seen it yet or you just don't want to know, now would be the time to— oh my god, jump scare!
Hello, Sydney. It's an honor.
Okay, now that we're past the spoiler warning, let's get to the thing you really want to know. Who's the killer? Just like the original, there's two Ghostface killers, the first being Jack Quaid's Richie Kirsch, boyfriend to our main heroine Sam Carpenter, played by Melissa Barrera. It just so happens that Sam is revealed to be the secret daughter of Billy Loomis, the original Ghostface Killer. Or one of the Ghostface Killers. Lesson here, always look at the love interest. The other killer is Sam's sister Tara's friend, Amber Freeman, played by Mikey Madison. Amber and Richie orchestrated this rewrite after meeting on a Reddit group. Second lesson? Always check their search history. Anyway, these Ghostface killers mow down most of the new characters and take out legacy characters alike before finally revealing themselves in the third act. I know that is a lot to lay on you all at once, so let me recap a little to show you how we got here. We have the classic Scream beginning with the Ghostface Killer terrorizing and attacking a teenage girl named Tara Carpenter home alone in the town of Woodsboro, California, 25 years after the events of the first movie. This time, however, the teenage girl lives, and her sister Sam, now living in Modesto, rushes back to her sister's side after leaving 5 years prior. But Sam's got a secret. As a teen, she learned that she's the daughter of Billy Loomis. Running away from whatever hereditary destiny may hold for her, she left Woodsboro as soon as she could and has been taking meds to shut out the visions of her young bloodied dad, featuring a heavily CG'd Skeet Ulrich in his reprised role. Anyway, once Sam gets to Woodsboro, a townsperson related to a former victim is killed and she realizes that this is only the beginning for the Ghostface Killer. Sam recruits the now former sheriff Dewey Riley to help her save Tara and her sister's friends. At this point, Dewey reaches out to Sydney and Gail to warn them to not return to Woodsboro. I think that's a very good friend if you ask me. Many of Tara's friends and acquaintances are related to prior franchise characters, placing huge targets on their backs, and now it's up to Sam to put an end to all of the threats. Unfortunately, Ghostface slashes up the town, killing Sheriff Judy Hicks and her son Wes at their home, where Gail and Dewey reunite and rehash how their relationship ended for the audience. While the whole sheriff's department is at the Hicks house, Sam realizes Tara is left unattended, so she and Dewey race to the hospital, where Ghostface is attacking Tara and Richie, who was called to check up on Tara. Dewey riddles Ghostface's body with bullets and gets the three to the elevator before staying behind to finish Ghostface for good. However, Ghostface survives and kills Dewey. At the hospital, Gail arrives to see Dewey's body in a bag, and shortly after, Sydney arrives to comfort her friend. At the same time, Sam decides to take Tara out of Woodsboro immediately. As a fellow final girl, Sydney offers her help to stop Ghostface, but Sam rejects it and she leaves with her sister and boyfriend out of town. Using a tracker, Sydney and Gail follow the trio to Amber's house where they're mourning Wes / partying, which just so happens to be the same house Stu Macher, aka the other Ghostface from the original film, used to do a few murders in after throwing a house party himself. The whole film is a super meta reference to the fact that Scream films have celebrated the way they always have been super meta references to classic slasher movies. There's even an in-universe series of films introduced in Scream 2 that reference the original films called Stab. Except this go around, it's also commenting on the toxic fandom that tries to claim beloved franchises for themselves. Anyway, once the house party gets cleared out, Richie finally reveals himself as the first Ghostface Killer. He's a rabid superfan of the Stab movie franchise, and he teamed up with Amber to stage a new series of killings to bring glory back to the franchise after years of being disappointed. After mixing it up with Sam, Tara, and the returned legacy characters of Sidney Prescott and Gale Weathers, both Richie and Amber die graphically and violently. After seeing a vision of a young Billy Loomis in the mirror, Sam finds a Ghostface blade and warns to never f**k with the daughter of a serial killer, then stabs Richie like 20 times. Like a very excessive amount of times. In the kitchen, Sydney and Gale fight with Amber, who is remarkably resilient. Amber lights the stove, Gale asks Sydney if she wants to do the honors, but Sydney says it's all yours, tosses Gale the gun, and Gale shoots Amber. Amber falls atop the stove and catches on fire, burning a very crispy death. Once again, the threat of the Ghostface Killer has come and gone, and order is restored to Woodsboro. For now. The film has a lot of fun poking fun at toxic fans who get mad when their precious franchises get ruined. Let's move on and run through some of these characters real quick. Sam we already introduced you to, along with her sister Tara and her boyfriend/killer/rabid fanboy Richie. Amber is a friend of Tara's who is also a killer and eventually gets the same treatment Mikey Madison's character also gets at the end of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Dylan Minnette plays Wes Hicks, son of Sheriff Judy Hicks, a legacy character from Scream 4. Or at least he did before Wes got killed by Ghostface. There's Chad and Mindy Meeks Martin, played by Mason Gooding and Jasmine Savoy Brown respectively. They're the nephew and niece of the late Randy Meeks, Jamie Kennedy's character who got killed off in Scream 2. As for returning legacy characters, David Arquette returns as Dewey Riley, who is the first of the legacy characters to be reintroduced. Dewey is no longer the sheriff and is kind of drinking himself into oblivion after becoming estranged from his ex-wife Gale Weathers, who now has a national morning TV news segment. Dewey does not survive this movie as he's brutally murdered by Ghostface, but Gale survives being shot by her. Sidney Prescott is off living the quiet family life after surviving the events of Scream 4. I mean, generally speaking, Sid's thriving for a person who's been targeted by crazed serial killers multiple times in her life. Just saying. She arrives after Dewey's death and teams up with Gale, Sam, and Tara to kill both Ghostface killers. Current Sheriff Judy Hicks, played by Mary Shelton, was a deputy in Scream 4, but nowadays she's the Sheriff of Woodsboro. Oh! Also, Heather Matarazzo returns as Martha Meeks, sister to Randy Meeks and mom to Chad and Mindy.
Doors unlocked.
The new Scream film definitely takes everything that worked about the original franchise films, refreshes it a bit, and does the whole thing again, and it works as well in 2022 as it did in 1996. So where does that leave the franchise now? The Ghostface Killer/Killers are dead, but that's happened many times before, and a new Ghostface always rises again to terrorize the residents of Woodsboro. If Paramount Pictures wants to make more Scream movies after this, they certainly could. One of the most impressive accomplishments of this take on the franchise is that it presents a future where Sidney Prescott doesn't have to be involved. The Carpenter sisters' story sets up a whole new target for future Ghostfaces thanks to their secret father, while the Meeks-Martin twins manage to fill the vacant Randy role while also assuming Dewey's formerly unkillable mantle. Exciting and fresh new takes aside, the return of Stu Macher's house has reinvigorated theories that half of the original Ghostface could still be alive. Stu has a bad time, but we never see any kind of concrete proof that he didn't make it out of the kitchen. With his parents' obvious resources and no one ever coming after Sid and company for the death of their son, who's to say old Stu isn't simply biding his time? With his best friend returning in spectral form, what better time for his return than Scream 6? Or is it 2? Whatever the next one is called.
Go finish it, Sydney.
Okay, now it's time for the Easter eggs we found in this one, and honestly, the entire movie is just one big callback to the prior films, so it's hard to parse out what's supposed to be an Easter egg and what is just a callback. Look, here are the ones that jumped out to us, and let us know what you saw. Deputy now Sheriff Judy's son Wes was named after Wes Craven, while Sam and Tara Carpenter pay homage to John Carpenter, which is a reference to the first movie where someone says Sydney is starting to sound like a Wes Carpenter flick. Wes would joke about how people would confuse him for the director of the Halloween films. When the kids all gather at Chad and Mindy's mom's house, there's a big shrine to their uncle Randy Meeks, who is played by Jamie Kennedy. His character broke down the serial killer movie rules to everyone the way Mindy does for this group. They also repeatedly play a scene from Stab that features the "I'll be right back" scene from the original movie. First scene we meet Tara's friends is staged exactly like it is in the first film, sitting at tables talking about the horrific opening scene incident. The character is eating a bag of grapes, which is also something teens did in the 90s. Look, when a movie is full of Easter eggs, even the smallest thing is actually the coolest find. Roger L. Jackson reprises his role as Ghostface, as he has in the previous 4 movies. While Richie is watching YouTube videos breaking down the Stab franchise, one of the videos is YouTubers Dead Meat roasting the fictional versions of the film. There is a bloody disgusting video on the sidebar of YouTube confirming Kirby from Scream 4 is still alive. And of course, at the very end of the film, there's a brief coda reading for Wes. This, of course, is referring to Scream franchise director Wes Craven, who died in 2015. This is the first Scream movie not directed by Wes Craven. But what did you think of Scream? Where does the Scream franchise go from here? And is this the last we've seen of the Ghostface Killer? Let us know what you think in the comments. Anyway, thanks for watching this episode of Canon Fodder, and for more of this kind of thing, here's the ending of Ghostbusters Afterlife Explained, and as always, be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you like to watch IGN.